Welcome to Radical Personal Finance, a show dedicated to providing you with the knowledge, skills, insight, and encouragement you need to live a rich and meaningful life now while building a plan for financial freedom in 10 years or less. My name is Joshua Sheets. I'm your host. I'm going to open today with an essay by Vinay Hiremath called I'm Rich and I Have No Idea What to Do with My Life. You will get the most out of this essay if you understand that Vinay was the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of Loom, which raised over $200 million, scaled to over 30 million users worldwide, and was acquired by Atlassian for $975 million a little over a year or so ago. I'm rich, and I have no idea what to do with my life. Life has been a haze this last year. After selling my company, I find myself in the totally unrelatable position of never having to work again. Everything feels like a side quest, but not in an inspiring way. I don't have the same base desires driving me to make money or gain status. I have infinite freedom, yet I don't know what to do with it. And honestly, I'm not the most optimistic about life. I know this is a completely zeroth world position to be in. The point of this post isn't to brag or gain sympathy. To be honest, I don't exactly know what the point of this post is. I tried to manufacture one, but I just felt like a phony. Then I recognized the irony of creating purpose out of a blog post when I don't currently have much conviction or purpose in life. So I'll just go ahead and explain my current situation for my own selfish purposes, to push myself to be completely and awkwardly vulnerable to a blob of nameless strangers over the internet. No expectations of what comes out of it. Going to the Redwoods and giving up $60 million. Last March, I had no idea what to do with my life. I knew that staying at the acquiring company was not it for me for the big company reasons you might suspect. Lots of politics, things moved slowly, NPC coworkers, etc. But I found it very hard to give up a $60 million pay package. I had already made more money than I knew what to do with, but your mind does funny things when you start to consider numbers like this. So I decided to go to the Redwoods and figure it out. Within 5 minutes of my first hike, the trees smiled at me and whispered their simple wisdom. What is the point of money if it not for freedom? What is your most scarce resource if not time? I would leave to do something, anything, to be alive again. I had no idea, but I was hell-bent on making sure everyone knew I had it all figured out. Out of ego, out of fear of wading into the unknown. When you work on something that consumes your life for a decade, it's hard to let go of the certainty and purpose you've grown accustomed to. Robotics, or my cringe trying to be Elon phase. The immediate 2 weeks after leaving an intense 10-year journey, I did what any healthy person does and met with over 70 investors and founders in robotics. I had been learning about robotics for quite some time and was positive I wanted to throw myself into giving computers arms and legs. I'd come up with all the taglines to delude myself into thinking this was my life's calling. Everything had been leading to this exact point. The world is going through a major labor shortage. We must stay competitive against China. The market for highly repetitive labor is multiple trillions of dollars. At the end of the 2 weeks, I left feeling deflated and foolish. I didn't want to start a robotics company. The only thing that seemed interesting to me was humanoids. It started to dawn on me that what I actually wanted was to look like Elon, and that is incredibly cringe. It hurts to even type this out. Breaking up with my girlfriend and realizing I'm very insecure. After deciding to not start a robotics company, I found myself rudderless. No sense of direction. I traveled to many beautiful places with my loving and supportive ex-girlfriend. This 6-month stretch could be several essays on its own, but the outcome of this period is that nothing seemed right. We started getting into regular arguments, and I knew it wasn't on her. It was me. I was starting to come to terms with all the mounting insecurities I had stuffed down over the past several years. I didn't feel like I could work on them with her. So I broke things off after almost 2 years of unconditional love. It was extremely painful, but it was the right call. I needed to fully face myself. I have only started to realize that when Loom was in its early innings, I felt very secure with my position in life. And lots of this stemmed from an extreme gratitude for the journey I was on. I was happy with everything as it was. The growth trajectory of the company was more than I could ever dream for. I was happy. I felt secure. It could all turn to shit the next day, and that would be okay. Then, as the company continued to skyrocket to new heights, I started to have growing expectations for myself, and others started to have growing expectations of me. When we went through our first round of layoffs, this company my ego was hitched to had suffered a massive blow, so I lost myself. This whole chapter of Loom has created a complex web of internalized insecurities I must now work hard to disentangle and free myself from. If my ex is reading this, thank you for everything. I'm sorry I couldn't be what you needed me to be. Climbing mountains in the Himalayas, remembering to do hard things. After breaking up with my girlfriend, I did what any healthy person would do and decided to externalize my emotions by climbing a 6,800-meter peak in the Himalayas with absolutely no mountaineering experience or training. In the earliest stages of trekking into the valley, before the altitude sickness, cold, and chronic bronchitis started to settle in, this seemed like the best idea in the world. It wasn't until every person I met along the way asked how long I had been training for that it started to settle in how insane what I was doing was. Needless to say, there were some rough patches. I got very hypoxic on one of my summits and had to rappel down cliff faces while tripping out of my mind. In the end, I pushed through, completed both my planned summits, and got reacquainted with how important doing hard things is to me. It is the heartbeat of my life, and I don't 100% understand why, but it probably has something to do with me not having the best childhood. When I got back home and regaled my friends with my mountain stories, one of my friends joked that I should work for Elon and Vivek at Doge and help America get off its current crash to defaulting on its own debt. So I reached out to some people and got in. After 8 calls with people who all talked fast and sounded very autistic, smart, I was added to a number of Signal groups and immediately put to work. Working for Doge for 4 weeks, remembering the power of urgency. Within 2 minutes of talking to the final interviewer for Doge, he asked me if I wanted to join. I said, yes. Then he said, cool. And I was in multiple Signal groups. I was immediately acquainted with the software, HR, and legal teams, and went from 0 to 100, taking meetings and getting shit done. This was the day before Thanksgiving. The next 4 weeks of my life consisted of hundreds of calls, recruiting the smartest people I've ever talked to, working on various projects I'm definitely not able to talk about, and learning how completely dysfunctional the government was. It was a blast. I learned about the power of urgency and having an undeniable mission, not by reading it somewhere, by experiencing it. I came to realize how laughable my robotics stint had been in comparison. And I started to realize that, although the mission of Doge is extremely important, it wasn't the most important thing I needed to focus on with urgency for myself. I needed to get back to ambiguity, focus on my insecurities, and be okay with that for a while. Doge wasn't going to fix that. So, after 4 intense and intoxicating weeks, I called off my plans to move to D.C. and embark on a journey to save our government with some of the smartest people I've ever met, and I booked a one-way ticket to Hawaii. Studying physics in the jungle, focusing on my insecurities. So now I'm in Hawaii. I'm learning physics. Why? The reason I tell myself is to build up my first principles foundation so I can start a company that manufactures real-world things. It seems plausible, but I'm learning to just accept that I'm happy learning physics. That's the goal in and of itself. If it leads to nothing, that's okay. If this means I'll never do something as spectacular as Loom, so be it. It's been too long since I've been completely raw and real with myself. So I'm applying a healthy dose of humility to everything I say and do. It's the only thing that feels authentic. However, there are some questions left unanswered. Why did I need to do the absolute most to reach this point? Why couldn't I just leave Loom and say, I don't know what I want to do next? Why do I feel the need to only be on a journey if it's grand? What is wrong with being insignificant? Why is letting people down so hard? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. I will link you to the original post in the show notes for today's podcast episode. And honestly, that may be all you need to hear today. If you just think about Vinay Hiremath's comments there, then you'll have food for thought. But let me expand on a few other points that I think will help you. First, as we begin a new year, and as you think about your life, your goals, your financial goals, undoubtedly you're full tilt, full shoulder into them already. Recognize that if you achieve massive financial success, and yet your life is not balanced in other areas, that financial success is not going to bring you the happiness that you are searching for. Notice that here's a man who very vulnerably shares his experiences and his thoughts, who, after 10 years of hard work, has been able to bank at least some hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't know exactly how much. Undoubtedly, he is financially independent for life. He can live a lifestyle of luxury for the rest of his life, and yet he opens his essay with this statement: I have infinite freedom, yet I don't know what to do with it. And honestly, I'm not the most optimistic about life. Now that's the line that hit me because I myself can resonate with that. I don't have hundreds of millions of dollars, and it would surprise me if I ever did. But I do have almost infinite freedom. And yet sometimes I don't know what to do with it. Now, I am optimistic about life. I can't share the second part of his statement. But it's been an interesting lesson for me. And so here you listen to a man, again, who has accomplished the dream, invested 10 years of hard work into building a company, sold it, secured his financial means for life, and yet is facing the question of now what? And I'll tell you, as somebody who prioritized freedom, I have the same experience. For many, many years, I wanted to build freedom for myself. You've heard me talk about that here on Radical Personal Finance for more than a decade. And over the years, I accomplished it more and more and more and more and more. And you get to the point and you say, wow, this is really challenging. This isn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. And I think that's a common experience, whether it's with personal freedom or whether it's with infinite financial wealth or whether it's accomplishing some other goal. In life, almost every goal you achieve will wind up having a moment of euphoria followed by a moment of dissolution. What do I do now? Now what? Everything seems black and white. And then you have to go on and find the next thing, discover the next thing to work on. This is going to sound a little self-aggrandizing, and I don't intend it to be that way, but I want to also share honestly. If you build a life that is not exclusively focused on money, as I open the show with, a rich and meaningful life. If you build a meaningful life, though, I think that the money will bring you more pleasure. And even if you don't have it, you'll still have more pleasure. Mr. Hiremath seems like my kind of guy. Like, I would really enjoy hanging out with him. And while I'd like to have some more millions than I do right now, as, of course, we all would, I wouldn't switch places with him. I wouldn't switch places with him because when I hear about his angst and his frustrations, I don't share any of that. It's not to say that there aren't times when I reflect and say, wow, I have all this freedom and I don't know what to do with it. But it is to say that I haven't structured my life exclusively around money. I've structured my life more broadly. And I find that really satisfying. I want others to share that. I've thought a lot in the last year about why am I doing what I'm doing. And one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing is to try to provide a little bit of an antidote against just crass consumerism. It's so easy to spend all of your time managing your money, focusing on money, focusing on financial returns. It's so easy to do that. Why? Well, because money is easily measured. And what gets measured gets managed. But just because we can measure money and therefore manage it effectively doesn't mean that that's what we should be entirely focused on. Our life should be fuller than that. Now, is it possible to be the chief technology officer of a tiger company like Loom and also have a stable marriage, also have a bunch of children, also love your parents and know your neighbors and be involved in meaningful ways with your community, also be working on other interesting problems? I don't know. I haven't done it. I'm guessing that it's kind of sort of possible, but not entirely, meaning that life does come through phases. While Mr. Hiremath has been working really hard and building a company and generating enormous money, and yet his personal life sounds very lonely to me, I think he'll probably work to fix it. Meanwhile, I've been in a phase over the past years where I've had all these young children in my life where it's been hard to go and do things, been hard to be involved with organizations, been hard to travel just because of the responsibilities at home. And yet I'm also at a point in life where I feel like, okay, things are changing. I'm re-engaging with business. I'm re-engaging with money in a much bigger way. And so it's probably not possible to do everything at the same time. Life, we're always a little bit out of balance. But it is possible to be appreciating and working towards all of these things and not to just maniacally being focused on one thing. If you are maniacally focused exclusively on money, to the complete exclusion of everything else in your life, listen from the very raw and vulnerable essay of this man to understand that once you make the money, you're still going to have challenges. You're still going to have to figure out, what am I doing? And what's so ironic about this is there is nothing in what Mr. Hiremath describes for which he needs even $1 million, let alone hundreds of millions of dollars. Think about some of the things that he said here in his essay. I went to the redwoods. I went hiking. And within the first 5 minutes of my hike, the trees smiled at me and whispered their simple wisdom. What is the point of money if not for freedom? What is your most scarce resource if not time? You don't need hundreds of millions of dollars to go and hike in the redwoods. You probably need a few hundred to get yourself a tent and a cooler and to go. A few thousand is probably nicer, but get yourself a little more comfort. But at the end of the day, hiking in the redwoods is practically free. Then think about his other focus, working on robotics, or his cringe trying to be Elon Faze. Breaking up with the girlfriend, it's not fun. I'm not going to question him. It just seems really sad to me to think, but who knows? Climbing mountains in the Himalayas? Well, certainly, yes, if you're going to go and be well outfitted. You're going to need tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to go and do that. But there's probably a mountain nearby that you can climb up for free, and it's hard. Going and working for Doge and then studying physics in the jungle. Notice that so many people who build wealth wind up doing the same basic things that you and I do. And that's why I feel so dumb for pointing something out that's so obvious. But friend, if you think that you need money to accomplish your goals, recognize that you probably don't. Now, I don't deny that some people do need money to accomplish their goals, but most of the time you don't. So focus on putting in place structures that are going to lead you to increasing amounts of wealth over time. Structures that are going to make certain that no matter what happens in the coming years, that your financial security will increase. But don't make that a primary, exclusive goal. Don't exclude other important things in your life. The other things that you don't necessarily need money for are probably going to be the things that bring you more satisfaction. Being spiritually grounded, being connected with other people, working to accomplish some greater purpose that's greater than you. Those are the things that are going to give you a sense of grounding. Hear me clearly. Just because you become wealthy doesn't mean you can't have those things. But don't wait to become wealthy to start living. Make certain that you have a good, strong, robust life plan that includes a plan for increasing levels of financial independence and financial freedom, but that also includes a plan that you execute on for living a meaningful life now. Keep those things squarely together. And then when your company sells and you wind up with a big stack in the bank, undoubtedly you're going to experience some of the things that Mr. Hiremath is experiencing. Well, now what? And undoubtedly you're going to need to take a year or two and try to figure that out. That's normal. But I think if you keep those two things together, you'll be ahead of where he is. I'm excited for what's in his future. None of this is against Mr. Hiremath. I just loved this essay. I thought it was so thought-provoking. It was such a wonderful essay to read. I hope that you enjoyed it. Happy New Year to you. Can't wait to be here with you for the rest of the year.